Hello, everybody. It is Tuesday here in cloudy Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm Keon Rose, and you're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've got a great show. If you're a Georgia Bulldogs fan, it's Florida week. It's Florida week. You've got that rivalry, one of the great rivalries in college football. Jim McElwain, first-year head coach of the Gators. This is going to be his first taste of this rivalry. Grayson Lambert, the quarterback for Georgia, him too. He's not from around here. And, you know, it's interesting because I'm not from around here originally either. And so one of my favorite things to do in sports is to learn the rivalries, the big rivalries of the areas that I've lived in. My dad was in the military and we moved around a lot. So I was able to be inside of a lot of rivalries. I lived in Maryland, Washington, D.C., Redskins, Cowboys, Dallas week. That's a huge thing. Went to Texas, basketball rivalry, Spurs, Mavericks, the I-35 rivalry, Red River shootout, Longhorns, Sooners. So I've gotten to be around some pretty incredible rivalries, hear how the fans react, to just keep my ear to the ground for how people are following these competitions. And I love it. I love it. I think living here in Tennessee, right here in Chattanooga, puts you on the border and you get involved in a lot of rivalries. You start to hear out for all of these different teams. You hear about an Alabama and an Auburn and an LSU and Georgia and Tennessee and Florida, and how all of these different rivalries interplay with one another. And it's been amazing. And Georgia, Florida this week is not going to disappoint, I hope. Because last week, Tennessee, Alabama, that was fun. That was absolutely fun. And watching Tennessee sort of become this team that's been able to give Alabama a challenge, that was fun. They had an opportunity to win it, but ultimately, the week leading up to it, where you got a little bit of panic and then you've got maybe just a little bit of hope and all of these things, the ups and downs of it. So I try to facilitate all of those things and give you, stats, little breakdowns, things that maybe might give you hope for the upcoming game, might give you something to hang your hat on. There's a lot to enjoy here. And I'm going to be going through my first Florida Georgia week on the air. So I can't wait to finish out that. I'm really a huge fan of Jim McElwain. Jim McElwain doesn't necessarily have a brand yet. You know what I mean? Like he's been doing a good job for the Gators. He's turned that team around a whole lot faster than I think anybody expected. And he went out recruiting last week, and there's a young man that didn't realize that Jim McElwain was the head coach of the Florida Gators. That the Jim McElwain said, "I'm the head coach of the Florida Gators," and this recruit said, "I didn't know that." So Jim McElwain's got a lot of brand building to do. Butch Jones has done it. Butch Jones, that Nike has done a good job of building up Butch Jones in Tennessee. The picture at the beginning of the season of Butch Jones sitting on a throne made out of shoes that looks like the throne made out of swords in Game of Thrones, and it said Game of Jones. Jim McElwain needs something like that. He needs something like that. Otherwise, we're going to have recruits going, who is Jim McElwain and why is he representing the Gators? Why did they send an intern to recruit me? And then embarrassingly realize that the head coach himself came and you didn't know who he was. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio Clutch with Keon Rose. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. Simply search Hot News Talk Radio. We are the first search that comes up. You can also find us on YouTube, comment, watch us live on the Hot Talk Cam here in the studio. You can see what I look like. You can see what Russell looks like, Mr. Judd, Mr. Tulis, all of them. All of the great voices that hopefully fill your morning and afternoon. And And I can't forget Tex, but we're losing Tex in a little bit, which makes me sad because I've had some great conversations with him and some of the best conversations that I've had in recent memory have been with Tex. So when we lose him, that'll be a guy that I miss a lot. This is Georgia, Florida week. But I want to talk about the World Series first. I'm going to get to I'm saving the best for last here. I'm going to talk about the World Series first because it was awesome. Okay, we had the Royals getting out to a 1-0 lead in the first inning in Kansas City, and then the Mets turned it on and jumped out ahead, and it looked like the Mets were going to hang in there and kind of cruise their way to a victory, except in the 8th inning, Alex Gordon knocks one out of the park, literally right over center field. The ball goes basically 500 yards. He just killed it. He just crushed it, ties up the ball game. We go into extra innings, and the best moment of the game came around the 12th inning when the Mets had to run out Bartolo Colon. And I did not realize that Bartolo Colon was still playing baseball. I also didn't realize that Bartolo Colon looks like he ate 4 other Bartolo Colons. He's enormous now. And they're showing highlights of Bartolo Colon making plays. And he had one play where he ran towards first base and threw a behind-the-back pass to the first baseman to make the out. And it would have been amazing if he had done it on purpose, except Bartolo Colon was literally too fat to turn and throw the ball directly at the first baseman and stop himself. He had to throw it behind his back. He made a great play out of necessity because he was so large. I've seen Bartolo Colon. The last time I saw Bartolo Colon, he was big. And he was somehow even bigger this time that I saw him. It was just a shock to me. Just, wow, Bartolo Colon. I haven't heard that name in a long time. Isn't Bartolo Colon 50? No, he's 42. And he's still playing meaningful baseball games in a championship series. And he looks like he ate about 4 of his teammates. Like that's what he's been doing. That was his paycheck there. He just has been collecting a paycheck and just eating. And it was just hilarious to watch him pitch because it was just like he's pitching over his massive gut. And I didn't realize that. Like, I guess that tells you how much Mets baseball I've been watching this season. But like, Bartolo Colon looks like he has been doing nothing but eating. We were watching the baseball game at the same time that we were watching the opening of the NBA season, which we'll talk about in a little bit here on Clutch with Keon Rose. We were talking about it, and we were talking about how Shaq looks pretty big now. I mean, the dude is becoming round. And Shaq always did like to eat. And Shaq's not playing basketball anymore, so he's obviously gaining weight. But that's different from what's happening with Bartolo Colon, because Bartolo Colon is still playing baseball. He is still in the major leagues. And I understand that baseball is not necessarily the most cardiovascularly intensive sport. You don't need to be in the greatest shape to be a baseball player. I understand that. I really do. But like, to be as big as Bartolo Colon is, that's hard to do when you're playing baseball every day. He looks like Garfield the cat. Like, he looks like Garfield. Like, I want to have like a long description of all the things that Bartolo Colon looks like, but just straight up, Bartolo Colon looks like Garfield the cat trying to stand upright and fit himself into a Mets jersey. And it was the most hilarious thing that I've ever seen, and I am shocked. I'm shocked that game went 14 innings because the Mets got 2 more innings out of Bartolo Colon than I thought that they would. He was still somehow throwing guys out. He's throwing his fastball. His fastball's like 88, and somehow he's getting guys out. And I don't know how that works. Like, how you could be Bartolo Colon and be a guy that looks like you've been hiding in the major leagues deep on people's benches and slowly and steadily eating members of your team, and people didn't know. And then you get out on the mound, and you've had to have been eating something. It was just like Bartolo Colon just downed the lasagna before he walked out onto the mound. If this sounds mean to you, I'm sorry. But that's what he looked like, okay? That like he's been just eating lasagnas every day while the Mets have been playing baseball games, and the Mets did not intend to have to run him out there and actually pitch him. The Bartolo Colon is, oh man, my first shock was Bartolo Colon is still in the major leagues. My second shock was Bartolo Colon looks much fatter than the last time I saw him, and he was pretty fat the last time I saw him. And then when they showed, here's the thing, like I'm just calling Bartolo Colon fat because he is, and it's funny, okay? Fox on the broadcast, they did not call Bartolo Colon fat. All they did was show a picture of Bartolo Colon from when he was initially in the major leagues, his rookie card. The last time that Bartolo Colon pitched in a World Series, he looked he was about 5 times smaller than he is now. It looked like that Bartolo Colon, young, skinny Bartolo Colon, ate about 4 more Bartolo Colons to become the Bartolo Colon that we know now. Also, his name is fun to say in conjunction to the fact that he is enormous. It's the perfect storm of things, and the World Series could not have been any better for that reason. So now that I've gotten all of that off my chest, and the Royals do beat the Mets 5-4 because, of course, Bartolo Colon eventually did load up all the bases because, I mean, he couldn't hold on to that level of production of somehow managing to squeak out of inning after inning. He couldn't do it. So that's what ended up happening. The bases eventually get loaded. A pop fly scores the winning run, and the Royals win. And we've got game 2 literally on the heels of a 5-hour game yesterday. Tonight, still in Kansas City. I can't even. It was so funny. And I'm sitting there, and my brother, who is a huge basketball fan, but not a baseball fan, we were both enraptured by Bartolo Colon attempting to pitch over his massive stomach. It was great. It was great. This is Florida, Georgia week. Possibly one of the great rivalries of the SEC. And we've got some newcomers, some key newcomers. Grayson Lambert and Jim McElwain. McElwain, the head coach of the Gators. Lambert, Bulldogs quarterback. And how do you jump into this? How do you jump into as fiery a rivalry as this is going to be if you haven't been a part of it before? Because I don't know how you introduce somebody to that. Especially Lambert. To believe that they play the game in Athens. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because that place is going to be loud. Florida fans travel. I don't know how you jump into this one. I really don't. This is a tough one to be like, okay, this is your first time here. And this is the rivalry that like maybe you get right the second and third time, but you're Jim McElwain. You're probably not used to all of this. And you're going up against Mark Richt, who pretty much is. Mark Richt has been doing this dance for 15 years now. And there's a reason why after 15 years, Mark Richt still has a job. He wins games like these. He does. And by the way, if you're a Tennessee fan, you're also a Georgia fan this week because we talked about it yesterday on the show. Scenarios whereby Tennessee could still somehow, by the magic of the SEC East being absolutely dreadful and terrible, and as terrible a thing as there is in college football in terms of just straight up depth, that Florida and Georgia are the class of the SEC East and everybody else is awful. Kentucky's 4-3 and everyone else has got a losing record. So just that, if you're a Tennessee fan, you're a Georgia fan because the rest of your schedule is easy, and you need Georgia to beat Florida. You just do. So if you have any Bulldog fans that you need to reconcile with, you go ahead and get that done. You need to, because you need them. You need them to lose later, but you need them to beat Florida this week. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose, and we'll be talking Florida, Georgia, NBA next.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Tired of insurance companies? Tired of doctors that won't spend time with you? Do something different. Leave the sick care model of medicine and come to Dr. Danielle Mitchell, the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health, where we're interested in long-term health solutions, not the quick fixes. Come see me, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, at the Chattanooga Sports Institute and Center for Health. I'm all about the long-term healthcare solutions and doing what's best. On the web, you can find me at ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. That's ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Or call us at 875-1005, 875-1005, or find us on social media, Facebook, Dr. Danielle Mitchell, or the ChattanoogaSportsInstitute.com. Let's go, ya!
Are you tired of working in corporate America, or have you recently lost your job and would like to consider owning your own business? If you are, please call me, as I can help you look at franchises or business opportunities that fit you, the economy that we're in, and the type of businesses that are right in the greater Chattanooga area. After I help my clients find the right opportunity, I also help them find the best way to finance the business, including paying yourself through the startup phase. If you would like to learn more about opportunities that may be right for you, please call me for a free assessment. My name is Bruce Krebs at the Entrepreneur Source. Phone number is 423-875-5621.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report, every Sunday at 9 a.m. This week, we take a step back from politics, business, and global events to speak with well-being expert Deepak Chopra. We've all had the experience of feeling invisible at a party, at work, or at home. Join us as we discover what to do when we feel invisible this Sunday at 9 a.m. on the Costa Report, right here on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Running games, running games, running games. They're not quite reindeer games, but they're more important. In this matchup, Georgia, Florida, you've got two teams that have not necessarily run the ball very well lately. And it's going to be interesting because whoever manages to run in this game is going to be the person who wins, if not because, at the very least, Georgia needs to run because they're just designed that way. They need to run to open up things for their passing game. And Florida loves to be in the backfield with your quarterback. They do. They produce a high number of sacks. They love to be in the backfield with your quarterback, presumably hitting him and hitting him hard and a lot. So Georgia's going to need to figure out this whole running thing because they've been declining in terms of rushing yards over the past few games. And at least in terms of yards per carry, like the average amount of yards that they're picking up every time a running back rushes the ball, it's been pretty low as of late. Like going back to the second half of the Tennessee game, they haven't been running the ball particularly well. And it's been pretty horrendous. And they need to solve that problem because if you let Florida pin their ears back and get to Grayson Lambert, it's going to be a long day for you. It's going to be a very long day. You're not going to win like that. You need to take some pressure off of Lambert, and you need to do it on the ground. And I don't know how you go about doing that. Maybe even you throw some passes, some short passes, screen passes to get the rush to back off a little bit. Turn that short passing game into a running game. But however it is that you choose to solve that problem, you cannot drop back and throw every possession against Florida. You can't do it. That's been one of the strengths of their defense, which is that they just get after your quarterback. And then they force you to make mistakes. And then they've done a very good job of taking advantage of those mistakes. Georgia's no slouch defensively either. They're pretty solid as well. So you need to figure out this rushing situation. And Florida, by the way, have not been juggernauts running the ball either. Like it's a two-way problem. The team that figures it out is the team that's going to be victorious, I think, in this matchup. Like you have to think so because of just how both of these teams are built. They're built not as running teams necessarily, but when their running games are going, their passing games open up. And the reverse is not true for them. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Baylor, where Baylor's like, look, we're just going to fling the ball all over the yard. And then when you have to figure out how to stop us from doing that, then we run. You can do it that way. It's harder, but you can do it that way. But neither of these teams, Florida or Georgia, are particularly built to work like that. The team that probably is going to figure it, I would think, would be Florida because of Kelvin Taylor and how he seems to perform against Georgia. Last season, he went nuts. He had 197 yards, 2 touchdowns against Georgia, and he's a guy that he can turn that on. Like, he's got that ability. I don't want to say it's a game-breaking kind of ability, but at least when he starts to get rolling, it's hard to stop him. This is AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. We're talking about Florida. We're talking about Georgia and the sort of keys to the game here that both of these teams are going to need. And I want to focus on the running game today because neither team has been running the ball well. And I don't know how you go about not running the ball well and trying to win this particular football game. Because if neither team runs the ball well, this is going to be a bad football game just visually to watch. It's just going to be an eyesore of a game. You know, and I'm not saying that low-scoring games are eyesores because I actually thought the Tennessee-Alabama game last week was a good game. Most of the action as far as scoring goes came in the last moments of the game. The last 3 or 4 drives were just kind of a flurry of action where there wasn't really a ton over the course of the entire game, especially for Alabama. But at the same time, the defense has played so well that it was just exciting to watch regardless. It was exciting to watch regardless. I can't think of many low-scoring games that tend to be very exciting because usually games are low-scoring because the teams are offensively inept. You're just not able to get up the field. You're just not able to move the ball, to make plays. not asking to make plays. No one's asking for juggernauts, okay? And when you run into some good defenses, you're just not going to be able to move the ball. And it's going to be obvious. When you watch it, it's not, oh, these two teams are simply inept at moving the football. It's just the defenses are so good. Florida's got a really good defense. Georgia's pretty solid also, but like Florida has been playing at a much higher level than I think anybody anticipated because, you know, Will Muschamp was the previous head coach, and he is a defensive guy, brought in a bunch of defensive players, and then when he became the defensive coordinator at Auburn, he brought some guys with him. He brought some of his players with him, the players that he recruited at Florida, he also brought to Auburn. He took them with him, and I just thought, well, that's going to be a huge loss for Florida defensively because I don't know how you continue to move forward from this being that devastated on defense. And give Jim McElwain all the credit in the world for making sure that his team still defends incredibly well to the point where Butch Jones was worried about them earlier in the season when they played. Not that Tennessee fans wanted to hear that, but that's the case. You know, and that's one of the things that I've been impressed with McElwain is that a lot of these victories that they're getting, they're not victories that they're getting where they're relying so much on offense, and when the offense sputters, they can't do anything. Their defense is coming up huge and making plays, and they're hard to score on. And Florida and Georgia playing basically not to determine the winner of the SEC East, but they are the two best teams in the SEC East, and everybody else is awful. Everyone else is so bad. It's them and Kentucky. Those are the three teams above 500. Those are the three teams above 500 in the SEC East. Like, I don't know if they're historically bad right now, but this is ridiculous. Like, all of the talent of the SEC is in the SEC West. Not that this is a drum that I'm particularly thrilled about having to bang on all the time, but like, man, it's bad. But yeah, the two key players of this game, Nick Chubb, Kelvin Taylor. Who's going to come out on top? And the last 6 quarters of football, okay, Nick Chubb's been averaging roughly 2.7 yards per carry. Like, from the second half of the Tennessee game to now, it's been 2.7 yards a carry. That's not good. They're going to need to do something about that. Because as far as a rushing offense goes, you know, Georgia's 22nd in the nation. Still, despite their seemingly declining running game, they've been so good at running the football that they're still one of the best running teams in the nation. Like, they're the ones that are more likely to figure out this whole rushing problem thing that they're having more than Florida. I think Florida's got the edge defensively. Georgia's got the edge offensively. But if Georgia, you know, allows Kelvin Taylor to have his way like he did last year, it's going to be a long game. It's going to be a long game. Okay, and here's the thing. You have to wonder, and I'm a little all over the place because there's a lot of elements to this game. I'll recap them for you. Here on Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Here are the elements of this game, and I'm juggling them because I'm literally I'm coming off a little ADHD in how this is happening, but like there's a lot to think about in this game because of the storylines. There's storyline number 1. Jim McElwain is new to this whole intense rivalry thing as far as Florida and Georgia go. Here are the intense rivalries that Jim McElwain has been a part of. Montana and Montana State, Eastern Washington and Idaho, and Colorado and Colorado State. No disrespect to any of those rivalries. I'm sure that they are perfectly intense rivalries. I'm sure that the fans with those teams involved care a lot. I'm not going to say Florida, Georgia is better than those rivalries, but I will say that it is bigger than those rivalries. The noise, the hate, the passion that you are going to get from Florida, Georgia dwarfs Colorado and Colorado State. It dwarfs Montana and Montana State. It dwarfs Eastern Washington and Idaho. It just does. The magnitude of this rivalry is larger. It may not be better, in quotes. I'm not going to be all, elitist and everything, but it's larger. It's a bigger rivalry. That's storyline number one that cannot be overlooked because Mark Richt is very experienced in this particular rivalry. He's been doing it for a while, and he's been doing it pretty well. Over the last stretch of years, there have been some very intense, very close games, and admittedly, Florida has gotten the best of Georgia more often than not lately, in the recent decade or so. But you're Jim McElwain, you've got a good team, doesn't mean that you just walk in and take this one. Second storyline that I'm juggling, the rushing games. You've got two teams that have good running backs, that run the ball particularly well, that are, for whatever reason, in their running games, declining, even though this is something that they do. And that's going to be a key to the game, if not the key. Which running back gets rolling first for his team, because the team that does that probably wins it. The pass rushes from either side are good enough that you cannot rely purely on the quarterback to get the job done, especially if you're Georgia. You have Chubb, and Lambert needs that space. He needs the passing game to be opened up by the rushing attack. He just does. He plays better when that happens. When Georgia rushes for over 150 yards, they win. When they don't rush for over 150 yards, they lose. It's about that cut and dry. If that's the most telling stat for them, when they go for over 150, they win. When they go for less than $150, they lose. They have to get going. But quite frankly, Florida needs that too. So it's going to be Kelvin Taylor versus Nick Chubb. Which guy gets going first for their team? That's the winner of this game. I'm calling it. I'm just, I'm not a sage. Not a sage, but there are some things that, at least to me, appear to be quite obvious. And the other storyline, the third storyline, is this. Who's going to win the SEC East? Because it's a dreadful place right now in terms of competitiveness. And these are the two teams that are actually competitive in it. Undefeated Florida. Not undefeated Florida. 1-loss Florida, 2-loss Georgia. This is where we're at. And everybody else has a losing record unless they're Kentucky, and that's not going to last much longer either, I don't think. That winning record that they're holding. I just don't think so. And those are the storylines of this game, and they're all three of them are running deep, and it's hard to talk about one without mentioning the other. And so I feel a little schizophrenic in how I have to talk about it, but these are the storylines of this game, and it's kind of crazy. So I'm going to ruin your day. I know nobody wants to talk about it because no one gets excited about the super long basketball season, but we'll talk about basketball here on Clutch with Keon Rose.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Are you tired of feeling like just another account number to your financial advisor? Try something refreshingly different. Call Edward Jones Financial Advisor Patrick Neal in Hickson at 870-7894. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
Social media, we're on that. Hot News Talk Radio on Facebook, at Hot News Talk Radio on Twitter. Download the TuneIn app and follow us anywhere at any time. AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Basketball is my favorite sport. I love the way the players triple up and down the court. But in all seriousness, the NBA is back. I went to go watch the opening games with my brother at Bar Louie, which is a great place to watch games because they've just got TVs all over the place. And for whatever reason, like the bar crowd shows up and then they just kind of all leave at once. And when that place gets emptier, it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. You got control over multiple TVs. They'll change it for you. It's pretty nice. Okay, they're huge TVs. I don't want to do an actual ad for them. I'd like to get paid for that, but I'm just saying it's a nice spot to watch the game. That's where I have been watching games for a while. I watch the NFL over there as well on Sundays. And I'm pretty decently well known in that place as guy who watches the Redskins play and loses his mind. So you can ask about me. They don't know me by name. They just know me as guy who watches the Redskins play and loses his mind. I was going to say occasionally loses his mind, but the Redskins always drive me crazy. So there you go. The NBA season started last night. The Atlanta Hawks played, and they played the Pistons. They did not win that game. There, at least is apparent to me, something missing in that offense that I cannot quite put my finger on. But there's something a little amiss in that offense, and I think the more games we'll play, the more games we will find out exactly what that is. Kyle Korver held down a little bit, only had 7 points. He was 1 for 5 from 3, but that wasn't necessarily a very good game. The Pistons definitely came out on top. They were rolling all over the place, but bright spots for the Hawks. Dennis Schroeder. I don't know how you pronounce that. It's German. I can't tell you how that works. But that guy, he's like the German Rondo when Rondo was still really good. 25 points last night. And this is from a guy that can't really shoot. Like he doesn't really shoot. That's what makes him very much like Rondo. He doesn't have a three-point shot that he can shoot. He's not a mid-range jumper that he can really shoot. He's more of a guy that his main problem is his ability to shoot at all. Man, I think the main thing for him is his ability to see the floor. He passes very well, and he slashes to the basket. He's incredibly good at that. He's really good at that. That shooting and that scoring literally everywhere else outside of 5 feet from the basket. Not so good at that. That part can use some work. I remember went to see the Hawks play last year. Dennis Schroeder, the Wizards were playing them. They left him open to shoot about a 15-foot jumper. So he was going to shoot it because he was wide open. and everybody in the arena yelled, "No, don't shoot it." And then he shot it and missed. Like, it's just one of those things. He's just not a good shooter. But that guy's going to be good. If he could ever add a jumper to his game, that's going to be a good point guard. And the fact that they have him and they still have Jeff Teague, and Jeff Teague scored 20. Okay, Horford played pretty well. Millsap played pretty well also. You have these guys on this team. They're very deep and talented team, and I think the only thing that they were really missing last night was one of those Korver performances. He doesn't have to go crazy, but Kyle Korver's a guy that made about half of the three-pointers that he shot last year, which is insane because that is not – the league average is around 30%, and here's Kyle Korver making about 49% of his threes. That's nuts. That's nuts. That's unbelievable to me. And then the other games that were on, which were more exciting games, because Detroit pretty much led throughout that Hawks game. They just never, Atlanta never hit that groove. They never got going. And they were just always behind. They were just playing from behind the entire game. And it would have been nice to see an Atlanta team that could have put up really, really any kind of fight, but they couldn't do it. And that's fine because, I mean, it is just one game in the season. There's 81 more games. You know, you don't hit the panic button, but this was definitely an upset. It was a surprise. Okay, the Hawks went 60-22 last year. They went 60 games. They didn't look like that team. They didn't look like that team. And meanwhile, Detroit, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for Detroit, 21 points. Andre Drummond, 19 rebounds. I mean, it's just the Hawks couldn't rebound, and I don't know why, because, I mean, that's what they brought in Tiago Splitter for, to help against guys like Andre Drummond, big guys that come in and ruin your day. You know, you get 15 from Horford, 18 from Teague, 19 from Millsap, 20 from Schroeder. I was expecting a different result than the one that I actually got. So I don't know what to say about the Hawks, except there's some defensive issues that obviously need to get tightened up. Whenever you give up 16 points to Ersan Ilyasova, you might have an issue on defense. You might have a problem. You just might. Okay? Guys, it's Ersan Ilyasova. There's a reason why you haven't heard of him, and that is because his name is Ersan. He's Ersan Ilyasova. You don't give up 16 points to Ersan Ilyasova. You just don't. And if you do, then it's no wonder that you lost the game, that you lost. You just can't afford to do that and win games. In Chicago against Cleveland, and I know, yes, okay, fine, this is Chattanooga. We don't want to talk about basketball. I'm not going to do this every day, okay? I'm not doing it all year, but I really like the NBA, and last night was opening night, and it was fun, and it was cool, and the Bulls played the Cavaliers in what was a really bad game to start off with, but then it got better going down the stretch, and the president was there, and it was a fun game. Okay, it was a fun game. President was watching, and the Bulls were able to win. So there you go. The home team gets one done for the president. Chicago, and Derrick Rose looked good. It was weird because he didn't look like explosion, brute force Derrick Rose, the Derrick Rose that we've seen in the past. He was very nimble, almost finessing it a ton. That's the Derrick Rose that we saw last night. That he still got the quickness, and if you try and push him around, it's not going to work. Like what happened in the finals with Steph Curry being pushed around by Matthew Dellavedova. Yeah, that didn't work for Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose a little bit bigger than Steph. Just a little bit. Bigger than Steph. And when it came to Matthew Dellavedova put his body against Derrick Rose and tried to push him around, Derrick Rose lives for that. Derrick Rose wants you to try and push him around. Derrick Rose dares you to try and push him around, and then he laughs in your face for attempting to push him around. It's not going to happen, especially if you're Matthew Dellavedova, who, by the way, almost single-handedly clanked the Cavaliers out of the game in the second quarter. He's got this floater that he likes to use. This floater, it's a push shot. And I don't know if there's anything more reliable in sports than a Matthew Dellavedova floater, because it's not going in. It is not going in. Okay. I don't know. Things that are that certain in sports. Rory McIlroy, 6-foot putt on the green. That's going in. Up until last night, Daniel Murphy hitting a home run in a game. That was happening. LeBron James, when he gets into one of those zones, that's happening. Leonard Fournette, devouring fools. That's happening. Matthew Dellavedova, floater in the lane. That's never happening. It's the most reliable thing I have ever seen. Not one of those floaters went close to going in or down or anything. I've never seen a person clank that many of those shots. It's supposed to be a good, like, you've got to practice that shot. I don't know if Matthew Dellavedova is aware that you have to practice that shot or if it's just a shot that was open to him, so he took it. But that looked awful. That was just dreadful. He almost single-handedly clanked them out of that game before LeBron, who has problems with his back as of this moment, brought them back into it. And that's when you realize, like, boy, this team is going to get really good if they just ever get Kyrie Irving back. Because what happened with Matthew Dellavedova and that floater, he made a few of those in the finals last year, and I think he thinks that's his shot now. It's not. It continues to not be his shot. Matthew Dellavedova made 100 of those in a row. I would bet against him making it all 100 times, and I would be wrong, but I would continue to bet against him because the law of averages says, okay, he made 100 of those. Yeah, he's never making any of those ever again. That's just how that works. He's not good at that shot, and he needs to find a way to shoot something else or practice that shot and actually be good at it because teams are going to allow you to do that. It's crazy. It's AM 1240, Hot News, Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. I'm talking a little bit of NBA basketball. Okay, I talked about majority of the show. I talked about football and baseball. I want my day. Okay, I understand this is not a Chattanooga thing. People in Chattanooga don't get all charged up about the NBA season. We don't have a professional team right here. Okay, we're about 2 hours from every professional team, which is why college sports is so important to us. I get it. I do. I actually hear your concerns, but I like the NBA. At least give me opening day of the NBA to talk about basketball. Please. Can I talk about some basketball? Thank you. I will talk about some basketball. The Warriors and the Pelicans were playing while Fat Bartolo Colon was pitching, and it was awesome because that game got out of hand in a jiffy. The Warriors and the Pelicans got into how do I put it? They got into a situation where it became very obvious that the Pelicans are a terrible basketball team that only has Anthony Davis. Like, there's Anthony Davis and there's nobody else. There is nobody else. Okay, it's Anthony Davis and a bunch of dudes. Their starting point guard last night was Ish Smith. To put that into perspective, Ish Smith was a Wizard like 4 days ago. They just released him from the team, and he was playing to be a third stringer. There's no Pelicans that there's none of them are good at basketball. There's Anthony Davis, and then there's a bunch of dudes. And Anthony Davis played pretty poorly that night. And do you know why? Because you only need to stop Anthony Davis. He's the only person you need to focus in on stopping. Like, why would you guard anybody else? You know, you can double on Anthony Davis. You can cover him with 1.5 guys because I don't trust Ish Smith to do anything. I don't trust Nate Robinson to do anything. I don't trust any of those guys. Like, that is misery. And here's the thing, Alvin Gentry, the way he became the head coach of the Pelicans and the way his offenses typically work is one point guard, one pretty decent point guard can look like a beast being coached by Alvin Gentry. A good point guard can look like a great. Okay. And Alvin Gentry was coaching Ish Smith into just mediocrity, like just regular, this be below average. This is terrible. That's a terrible basketball team. And the Warriors just ran them out of the building. The Pelicans hung in there first. Okay. Like they made it look like a game, but it took everything they had, including Kendrick Perkins looking like a real basketball player. Like Kendrick Perkins was the main focal point of the offense in the first quarter for no good reason. And B, he looked like an actual competent basketball player for once in the last 4 seasons. Like he really did. And the problem with that is if Kendrick Perkins is the best player on the floor for you, you're bad. You're terrible. And that's the Pelicans. It's like, okay, we'll let Kendrick Perkins score as much as he wants because he's not Anthony Davis. And sooner or later, the Kendrick Perkins we all know and love, where he just starts traveling for no reason, where he's throwing up hook shots like he's Wilt Chamberlain, but he's not Wilt Chamberlain. That Kendrick Perkins is going to start showing up eventually, and there is nothing for us to do. You know what? They shouldn't have started. Me and my brother watched The Martian the other day. Matt Damon was great in The Martian. You know who should really have started in The Martian? Anthony Davis. Because he's on that Pelicans team alone. He was more alone than Mark Watney was in that movie. Mark Watney is the man trapped on Mars by himself. And Mark Watney had more company than what Anthony Davis has on the New Orleans Pelicans. That team is so bad. I feel so bad for him. I don't know if there's anybody in sports that I pity more right now. Either him or, nope, just him. Just him. Because he is alone on a team with nobody else on it. I promise we won't spend whole swaths of time this year talking about basketball. I just had to get that off my chest. It's going to happen from time to time. I'm a basketball guy as well. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose. I'll see you in 23 hours.
Media Network's coverage of the NFL. Hi, this is Jerry Recco. Join Kevin Ray, Danny White, and myself for all the action.
Hot News Talk 1240.
If it's the NFL, it's right here.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Cell surgeon and a